Okay, so take a bunch of pictures. I already did. But take plenty of pictures and measurements, and make sure you're ready for you to chop this thing apart. Thank you, Yoda Tech. Thank you, Jason 4x4. I'm using your article. So according to Jason 4x4, that's what you want from this guy. So you're cutting off this flange, this pipe from here, and this flange, but you're gonna leave this pipe alone connected to the double 2-to-1. But be sure to chop off the welds, not the pipe. So I'm gonna try my best to do that. Just chop the welds, but not the length of the pipe. Yes! I cut through a little bit. We'll see how that goes, but everything else was mostly untouched. Cut 1 out of 3 is done. So that guy used to go there. I'm going to do this 2 more times, and I don't need to film it because it took so long and editing is epic. Alright. I have decided that I cannot angle grind this tiny gap, unlike these two guys. So I'm just going to chop it all the way through. And hopefully that doesn't mess me up too much in the future. Okay, I'm going to chop this all the way through. I'm using a Dremel to get through the final last part. It's too thin otherwise, this little guy. So I'm just going from the inside. Sisyphus must have been happy. Okay. Sawzall, Dremel, angle grinder. Alright, so we got this guy attached. Because I had to chop, I couldn't chop just the weld, I had to chop the whole pipe. You can see how there's pieces of pipe left over. I'm probably just going to hammer that out and we'll fit in the next piece. So I'm going to punch this out, but other than that, okay, kind of gnarly lighting, but I'm going to start tacking up and chopping pieces to fit. So I'm going to bolt these guys in and put the gaskets in just in case. I really don't know if that matters, but I'm going to do that now. Okay, that's in. I'm just going to bolt them in. If not, I might loosen these guys and stick the pipe through. Stick this pipe through. Actually, that fits. I took a bunch of measurements before, so hopefully they line up good. And one thing I've heard about building these yourself is that if you build this flange too far out, you'll hit the frame on the Toyota pickup. So I'm gonna try and keep this as close as possible to the transmission and bell housing. Hopefully this thing freaking fits, dude.
Do a 3/4 swap crossover pipe. The first thing you're gonna do is cut this little heat shield off. Some prime.
Flanges are bolted, grinded, chopped, ready to go. I'm gonna tack this guy in first and work off of this guy, so might do some measuring and triple checking before I zap this guy in. Basically all the measurements I took earlier have nothing to do with this piece, so I'm just going to make sure that this guy doesn't exceed the manifold, because it did not exceed on the other side. And I'm also going to keep it as tight as I can to the transmission / bell housing without actually overlapping. Yeah. Okay, here we go. There's one zap. One more. Okay. Okay, after much indecisiveness, it is tacked in. So I was looking at this when I spent such a long time lining it up. I was trying not to exceed right here. So I think I did a pretty good job. That shows nothing, but keeping this flange within the exhaust manifold and keeping the flange also within the bell housing bolt right here. So as you can see, some clearance. For our first cut, I marked it right here at the Sharpie. We're gonna chop where it's straight on this side. For our second cut, we're gonna be chopping right here on the Sharpie line I marked. You're gonna be coming up from the other side and come up and chop right where this bend starts. So I tried my best to draw it out with Sharpie. Chop that out and see how it goes. Okay, here's the first chop I did. So this will fit in here. I'm in the process of trying to fit these pieces I chopped, have this guy mocked up, this is tacked in, and obviously since we're chopping something that was not meant for this, it does not fit perfectly. So we have some issues with the bend and it's hitting the head. So what I have thought of doing is raising it up to match that curve. Then it starts to fit. And I'm going to use the metal from this piece. So the metal from this I'm going to chop, and it's going to lift up this curve a bit just so we can start to fit this and start mocking it up. Alright, so I'm going to mock up this piece. I have my Sharpie now. So as I mentioned, this guy, since it wasn't built for this, doesn't actually fit properly. So what I thought of doing is I'm going to take this end, stick it through to raise this angle until it clears everything. So I'm going to mock this up and mark where I want to cut and then chop it. So I cut this piece out, and this guy grinded them, marked it. So that's the piece I'm going to be making. So I'm going to tack it together, and then I'll keep moving from there. I'm going to tack in this piece now. I'm going to tack it into the flange. So stupid. I just zapped myself. So stupid. Oh my gosh, dude. Now I'm mocking up the rest of this. This guy is not tacked in yet. He moves. I have these two. This is an extra piece of 2-inch exhaust piping. So I'm going to use this to basically bridge the little gap that I created. There's just not enough material to use the stock crossover pipe, which is to be expected. I'm just going to use this guy to finish off the final, basically, inch that's missing. But it's almost there. Hopefully that fits. I'm going to cut extra just to be safe. Alright, I got it to a spot where I'm pretty happy with, honestly. I wanted it to not stick out too far. The stock one came really close to the head, and also this this heater core pipe. So I wanted to do the same. I was worried about going too far out and actually hitting the firewall of the truck. Okay, it's all tacked up, bolted in, tacked up. It's one piece, so I'm gonna unbolt it and set it up for welding. Gotta clean it up more, but looks better than this one. Alright, so I'm battling this guy. The gap is pretty big to weld, and I'm still like a beginner welder, so I'm just working on trying to get the right settings to fill that gap and keep it clean. really splattery, but it should be solid. Hopefully those are good enough.